Do not be alarmed if you find the dry carcass of a frog nailed somewhere at the entrance of a house in Morocco. They are meant to bring in baraka, or good fortune. But if you are seeking a potent magical fetish or potion, you'd better head off to the souks or markets, and right there, in the hidden corners of the market, you may just find what you seek. Hello friends, I want to thank everyone who has subscribed and left comments on my videos. I read every comment. Thank you. Today, we look at North African and Sudanic fantasy aesthetics. This is the fourth entry in the African fantasy aesthetics series. If you haven't watched the other videos, you can find them on my channel. Just like the other videos in this series, we look at the elements of fantasy aesthetics, including architecture, clothing and fashion, magic systems, and materials and technology. The Maghreb region comprises countries in West and Central North Africa. These countries include Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, and Mauritania. Since the entire Maghreb region is hot, arid, and dry, the buildings are made of easily accessible materials. So, you encounter houses made of rammed earth, adobe, clay bricks, and wood in the entire region. Great examples of houses built with these materials are in the Qasr of Ait Ben Hadu, a Moroccan fortified village built in the 17th century. It was built by the Amazigh communities escaping subjugation by invading Arab armies marching from the northern parts of Morocco. From the earthen walls that surround the entire village and the defensive towers standing at the four corners of the wall, you can tell that the villagers were expecting an invasion from the enemies they had escaped. Within the walls is a collective grouping of single-story houses made of adobe that tightly crowd together in clusters. Only the head of the tribe lives in a two-story adobe house. Painted on the exterior walls of the head of the tribe's house is an Amazigh geometric motif or emblem representing the freedom of the Amazigh people. This style of building hasn't changed for over 500 years. Streets in this village are so narrow and disorienting that an invading army would find it difficult to charge through the city. Even the entrances of the houses don't have windows, which means any intruder would not see an attacker when attempting to enter these dwellings. Even the granary was fortified and situated on a hill to secure the village's food supply. In Walata, an ancient trading town in Mauritania, you see an architectural style similar to that of the Qasr of Morocco. Obviously, this is because Walata was also built by the Amazigh people. But Walata was built in the 8th century as a caravan town for the purpose of trade in goods such as salt and gold. Not all the houses in Walata are made of adobe. Some are constructed using fieldstones, clay, and wood. The women of Walata were in charge of painting beautiful abstract patterns on the exterior and interior of the adobe houses. Plaster and earth were used to create these paints. Mothers would pass these painting techniques to their daughters. Another Amazigh town in Mauritania is the town of Tichit, founded in the 12th century. In Tichit, the houses are made of stone, clay, and wood. You see this style of building clearly represented by their mosques. Tichit mosques consists of a minaret and a single square or rectangular prayer hall with a vaulted roof supported by thick columns. The only decoration on the building are the 5 ostrich eggs placed at the top of the minaret. Typical dwellings in Tichit include a walled enclosure with 1 or 2 rooms. The rooms can serve any purpose because the residents of the town are nomadic and only occupy these buildings for a specific period of time. The facades of these buildings only have a few openings, including the decoratively placed ventilation holes, small windows, and low doors. Maybe due to their nomadic lifestyle, they did not have enough time to focus on decorating their buildings. But later in the video, we get to see their exquisite sense of style in how they dress. In Tunisia, you find Roman-era architecture such as the El Jem amphitheater. But there is evidence that in the pre-Roman era, Tunisian houses looked just like those in the Casas of Morocco. Those are the ancient villages of Morocco. This also applies to Algeria and Libya, which were also under Roman rule in ancient times. Sudan is a little different because its most ancient buildings are the famous pyramids and temples of the ancient city of Meroe in what was then called the Kingdom of Kush. That is way back in the 8th millennium BCE or before Christ. The Kingdom of Kush didn't just trade with Egypt, they also intermarried and shared religious practices. During the medieval era, we had Christian kingdoms in Sudan such as Makuria, Nobadia, and Al-Lodia. Builders in these cities utilized stones and bricks in construction. For instance, you have the Thronehold of Dongola, which is a two-story building on a rocky hill overlooking the Nile Valley. It was built in the 9th century with baked brick, mud brick, and limestone. You also have Nubian earthen houses in Dongola. They are built in the Sahelian style, which utilizes clay, adobe, and wood in construction. And I assume you all know what ancient Egyptian houses looked like. The Egyptian complexes were constructed using dressed stone, but the normal houses were made of adobe or fieldstones. And you need to check out the troglodyte houses of Tunisia. These are houses that are carved directly into rock faces or excavated underground. Ancient people built these houses for the natural insulation they provided against the intense daytime sun. As in other regions of Africa, ancient North African clothing was shaped by a number of factors, one of which is the climate. Remember that the region covering Morocco, Mauritania, Algeria, and Tunisia, and even northern Sudan and Egypt, is hot and dry. Other factors that influenced fashion and clothing style include trade, status, and cultural contact. Fashion and clothing for the Amazigh population, who occupy every region of North Africa, have similarities and differences. Firstly, an ancient Amazigh clothing in most of this region was made from wool, cotton, or linen. They would use natural dyes made from plants such as turmeric and saffron to color their clothes. Amazigh clothing and jewelry were not merely decorative. They communicated status, protection, beliefs, and connection to community. But it is important to add that Amazigh people are a diverse group. So the meaning behind what they chose to wear was not always the same. Broadly speaking, Amazigh clothing, especially in Morocco, consisted of the jelaba, the banus, and the kaftan. Both men and women wore the jelaba, a long, loose-fitting outer robe with a hood and a V-shaped collar. It features a straight cut and is often designed with solid colors or vertical stripes. A kaftan is a loose and flowing garment designed with the intricate embroidery or tribal motifs at the front. It is worn by women. Separate from the jelaba, Amazigh men also wear a loose ankle-length robe with long sleeves, complete with a head wrapper to protect from the sun and the dust. The robes may have solid coloring or patterns that have different meanings. Finally, the banus is a sleeveless, long-hooded cloak often worn by the elite as a symbol of prestige and for protection from the elements. Depending on the region, the Amazigh women wore jewelry in their hair and often covered their hair with some kind of cloth. For example, they may cover their head with the tahrut, a dark-colored headscarf with intricate and colorful embroidery designs. The Tuareg, or the Amazigh people of Niger, have similar clothing to that of the Amazigh in northern Africa. But the Tuareg men tend to only wear indigo blue robes and head wrappers. The women, on the other hand, wear dark blue or purple colored robes complete with elaborate jewelry on their heads and necks, complemented by henna on their hands. A major piece of jewelry worn by the men and the women is a necklace of beads with a cross-shaped metallic pendant. It is called the Cross of the Tuareg or the Cross of Agadez. It is a protection amulet or talisman, and the four sides of the pendant represent the four corners of the world. The talismans worn by the Amazigh people are not the only evidence that magic has survived the introduction of Islam to the Maghreb, Egypt, and the Sudan. In fact, knotting, a form of magic that involves tying knots as a form of control, is still practiced all over North Africa and some parts of Sudan. The character being bound through knot magic is often a saint of the Islamic world. Knotting in this context involves tying a rag on a pole planted on the cairn or grave of a saint. As the person ties the knot, they declare that they are tying the saint and will only release the knot if the saint releases the person from their troubles or problems. People in these regions also weave magical patterns onto their clothing to protect themselves from evil jinns. But as I learned from the comments and through research, jinns are not inherently evil. They can do evil such as haunt houses and possess people, but they can also be called upon for healing, succor, and good fortune. What did magic and religion look like before Islam or Christianity? We can make assumptions based on some practices that have survived the introduction of Christianity and or Islam to these regions. So, in addition to the use of talismans, there is still belief in witch doctors and healers and sorcerers and witches. Even imams still use methods such as cupping, herbs, and bee stings to relieve people possessed by jinn. There are also musical rituals carried out in religious settings to heal people. But a much stronger indication that the ancient practices still thrive is the medicine men who sell magic paraphernalia such as turtle shells, padlocks, and dry reptiles to protect people from the evil eye. You find these shops in hidden areas of markets, especially in Morocco. Evidence of pre-Islamic religions among the Amazigh people also exists. They had gods such as Gurzil, a god of war and son of Amun. Then there is a god of rain and water called An-Naza. This god guaranteed the fertility of the land and the supply of rain. He was represented by the rainbow. Technology in ancient North Africa and Sudan is represented by irrigation, metallurgy, mining, agriculture, mathematics, weaving, trade, engineering, and education. Mathematics was used in Kemet or Egypt to calculate the size of parcels of land, for architecture, calendars, and managing resources. They also had schools where they taught different disciplines such as writing, philosophy, math, science, and more. These subjects were also taught in the Kingdom of Kush, which was a trading partner and military ally of Kemet. Some of the products of the technology of these ancient kingdoms include minted coins, textiles, agricultural goods, weapons, tools, chariots, and papyrus scrolls. Other goods included olive oil, pottery, fruits and spices, horses, gold, iron, and ivory. Experts indicate that without goods from North Africa, the Roman Empire would have declined faster than it did. So, there you have it. I know most of you are familiar with the fantasy aesthetics of North Africa because you have either seen them in movies or in your favorite video games. However, there is more that I have not presented here in this video. I hope you liked the video. Please subscribe, like, and share, and leave a comment. Goodbye and good luck.